I pulled into the driveway at 4:30 on Thanksgiving afternoon, my Honda sputtering like it always did these days. The house looked different somehow. Empty. I'd been working a double shift at Riverside Care Home because nobody else wanted to cover Thanksgiving, and Mrs. Patterson had been having one of her episodes. But I'd told Tom and Alice I'd be home by 5. We were supposed to have dinner together. The front door was unlocked. That should have been my first clue, but I was tired, and my feet hurt, and all I wanted was to sit down and maybe have a glass of wine before dealing with Alice's passive-aggressive comments about the turkey being dry. The house was silent. No cooking smells, no voices, no television playing football in the background. "Tom," I called out, dropping my purse on the hall table. "Alice?" Nothing. I walked through the living room, my shoes clicking on the hardwood floor Tom had insisted I help pay for last year. The dining table was bare. No plates, no candles, no centerpiece. Just the same scratched surface I'd eaten breakfast at this morning. The kitchen was worse, clean, untouched. The turkey I'd bought 3 days ago was still in the fridge, wrapped in plastic. That's when I saw the note. It was stuck to the refrigerator with a magnet shaped like the Eiffel Tower, a souvenir from their honeymoon to Paris. The honeymoon I'd helped pay for because Alice's father had cash flow issues. The note was in Alice's handwriting, neat, precise, the kind of penmanship they teach at expensive private schools. "Clara, we decided to spend Thanksgiving with real family. Went to the Hamptons with Mother and Daddy. Please take care of him for us. There's money on the counter for any expenses. A. Real family." I read it 3 times, standing there in my nursing scrubs, with my feet throbbing and my back aching from lifting Mrs. Patterson in and out of her wheelchair all day. Real family. I'd given birth to Tom in a county hospital 30 years ago. No husband, no family, nothing but determination and a part-time job waiting tables. I'd raised him alone, worked double shifts, skipped meals so he could eat, put myself through nursing school at night while he slept. I'd been there for every scraped knee, every bad dream, every triumph and failure. But I wasn't real family. I looked at the money on the counter. $300 in crisp 20s, arranged in a neat stack. Payment for services rendered, like I was the hired help. That's when I heard it. A creak from the living room. I turned, my heart suddenly pounding. There was a man sitting in the rocking chair by the window. Alice's stepfather, Anthony Green. I'd only met him twice before, both times at family functions, where he'd sat in the corner, nursing expensive whiskey, and watching everyone with those sharp, calculating eyes. He was watching me now, one eye open, the other closed, like he'd been waiting. "Shall we start?" he said, his voice rough like gravel. He was wearing a cardigan and slacks, his silver hair perfectly combed. "They left about 3 hours ago." I stared at him. My brain was trying to process this. Anthony Green, sitting in my living room, waiting for me to come home. "What are you doing here?" I asked. He opened both eyes now and leaned forward slightly. The rocking chair creaked again. "They asked me to house sit. Make sure you didn't cause any trouble." He paused, studying my face. "That's what Alice said anyway, that you might cause trouble." I felt something cold settle in my chest. House sit. In my house. Technically, it's Tom's house now, isn't it? He pays the mortgage. Has for the last 2 years. He was right, of course. After I'd co-signed for the loan, Tom had slowly taken over the payments, then started calling it his house, then started making decisions about his property. I'd been too grateful for the help to protest. "Why are you really here, Anthony?" I asked. He smiled then, just a slight curve of his lips. "Because Alice is a fool, and my stepdaughter doesn't realize that the enemy of my enemy is my friend." He stood up slowly, his joints popping. "She thinks I'm here to watch you. Make sure you don't trash the place or steal the silverware." "And you're not?" "Oh, I'm watching you, Clara, but not for the reasons she thinks." He walked over to the kitchen, picked up the stack of money and held it out to me. "This is insulting." You know that, right? I took the money, my hands shaking slightly. Why do you care? Anthony Green looked at me for a long moment. Then he said, because I've spent 30 years watching Alice's mother bleed me dry, watching her daughter turn into exactly the same kind of parasite. And now I'm watching her sink her claws into your son. He paused. I'm tired of it, Clara. I'm tired of being used. So what are you suggesting? He smiled again, wider this time. It wasn't a friendly smile. Alice made a mistake leaving me here with you. A big mistake. She thinks I'm loyal to her, that I'll report back everything you do, everything you say. But what she doesn't understand is that loyalty is a two-way street. I looked at the note again. Real family. Take care of him for us. Him? I asked suddenly. Who's him? Anthony's smile faded. He walked past me to the hallway and opened the door to the guest bedroom. I followed, something like dread building in my stomach. Inside the room was Alice's grandfather, Martin Green. Anthony's father. He was 92 years old, mostly blind, suffering from advanced dementia. I'd met him once at the wedding. He'd been confused then, asking for his wife who had passed away many years ago. He was lying in a hospital bed that hadn't been there this morning, hooked up to an oxygen tank, sleeping fitfully. They couldn't take him to the Hamptons, Anthony said quietly. Too much trouble, too embarrassing. So they left him here, with you. They figured you'd take care of him, just like you've taken care of everything else they've dumped on you. I stared at the old man, at his thin chest rising and falling, at the IV stand beside the bed, at the monitors beeping softly. They didn't even ask me, I whispered. No, Anthony said. They didn't. We stood there in silence for a moment. Then Anthony turned to me, and his eyes were sharp again, calculating. Shall we start? He asked. I looked at him, at the old man in the bed, at the note in my hand with its casual cruelty. Real family. Yes, I said. Let's start. While you're here, don't forget to subscribe and support this channel with a like. And tell us below, have you ever faced something like this? Anthony made coffee while I checked on Martin. The old man's vitals were stable, his medications laid out on the nightstand with detailed instructions. Alice had thought of everything except asking my permission to turn my home into a nursing facility. I found Anthony in the kitchen, 2 mugs of black coffee steaming on the counter. No cream, no sugar, he said. I remember from the wedding reception. I picked up the mug, surprised he'd noticed something so small 2 years ago. You pay attention. Always have. He leaned against the counter, studying me over the rim of his cup. It's kept me alive this long in a family of sharks. Is that what they are? I asked. Sharks? Alice is. Tom's learning to be. He set down his mug. You want to know what they said about you before they left? I wasn't sure I did, but I nodded anyway. Alice said you were getting clingy, that you kept trying to insert yourself into their lives, that you needed to learn boundaries. He paused. Tom agreed with her, said you needed to understand that he's a grown man now with his own family. The words hit like a slap. I'd been so careful the last 2 years, so conscious of giving them space. I'd turned down dinner invitations so I wouldn't seem pushy. I'd stopped calling unless Tom called first. I'd smiled through Alice's subtle insults, her comments about my clothes, my job, my house. His own family, I repeated. The family that matters, according to Alice. Her mother's circle, the right people, the right connections. Anthony's voice was bitter. I've watched this happen before. Alice's mother did the same thing when we got married. Cut off her first husband's family. Cut off anyone who didn't meet her standards. Alice learned from the best. I sat down at the kitchen table, suddenly exhausted. Why are you telling me this? Because you need to understand what you're dealing with. This isn't just a daughter-in-law who doesn't like you. This is calculated social engineering. Alice has a plan, and that plan doesn't include you. What kind of plan? Anthony pulled out a chair and sat across from me. Tom works at Holbrook Financial, right? Investment banking? Yes, he just made junior partner. With Alice's father's help, Robert Ashworth pulled strings, made introductions, greased wheels. He leaned forward. But Tom's smart, ambitious. He's not content being someone's protege. He wants to build his own empire. That's not a bad thing. It's not. But Alice wants to control that empire. She wants Tom focused entirely on climbing higher, making more money, building the right image. And you, Clara, you're the wrong image. I felt my jaw tighten. Because I'm a nurse? Because I don't come from money? Because you remind Tom where he came from. You're proof that he wasn't born into this world, that he clawed his way up from nothing. That makes Alice uncomfortable. It makes her family uncomfortable. It makes the whole carefully constructed fantasy uncomfortable. I thought about the last time I'd seen Tom, 3 weeks ago when I'd dropped off his birthday present. He'd met me at the door, hadn't invited me in, said he and Alice were busy, had plans. The present, a first edition of his favorite childhood book that I'd saved for months to buy, had felt suddenly inadequate in my hands. He'd thanked me, kissed my cheek, and closed the door. I'd cried in my car for 20 minutes before driving home. So, what do you suggest I do? I asked. Just accept it. Let them erase me. Hell no. Anthony's voice was sharp. I suggest you fight back. How? I don't have their money, their connections, You have something better. You have knowledge. You have access. And now you have me. I looked at him skeptically. Why would you help me? What's in it for you? Revenge, he said simply. Alice's mother has been bleeding me dry for 30 years. Expensive trips, expensive clothes, expensive everything. And Alice is the same, just younger and prettier. She married Tom for his potential, not for love. She's using him, just like her mother used me. And when she's done with him, she'll move on to someone better. You don't know that. I have a prenup from my marriage to Alice's mother. Want to know what it says? In the event of divorce, I keep nothing. The house, the investments, the cars, everything goes to her. I signed it like a fool 30 years ago because I thought she loved me. He laughed bitterly. I've been trapped ever since. What does this have to do with Tom and Alice? They're building the same trap. I've seen the documents. Tom signed a post-nuptial agreement last year, right after he made junior partner. Alice convinced him it was for tax purposes. It wasn't. It was to make sure that if they divorce, she gets 70% of everything. My stomach dropped. Tom wouldn't sign something like that. He did. Alice had her lawyers draw it up, buried the important clauses in legal language, and convinced him it was standard for people in their tax bracket. Anthony pulled out his phone, scrolled through it, then turned the screen toward me. I have a copy. She emailed it to her mother, bragging about it. I monitor Margaret's email. I stared at the document on the screen. There was Tom's signature at the bottom, neat and confident. He doesn't know what he signed, I whispered. No, but he will eventually. And by then, Alice will have already positioned herself to take everything. Anthony put the phone away. Unless we stop her first. How? By exposing what they really are. By destroying the perfect image Alice has worked so hard to build. By making Tom see the truth before it's too late. He paused. And by making them pay for treating us like we don't matter. I thought about the note on the refrigerator. Real family. About Tom closing the door in my face. About 30 years of sacrifice reduced to $300 on a counter. Tell me what you know about them, I said. Anthony smiled. We spent the next 2 hours going through everything Anthony had gathered. He'd been preparing for this, I realized. Maybe not consciously, but all those years of watching and listening and paying attention had given him an arsenal of information. The kitchen table was covered with printouts, photographs, spreadsheets. Anthony worked methodically, explaining each piece of evidence like he was building a legal case, which in a way, he was. Alice has a spending problem, he said, pulling up spreadsheets on his laptop. She's maxed out 3 credit cards Tom doesn't know about, designer clothes, spa treatments, jewelry. She's running up about $40,000 in debt. I leaned closer, studying the numbers. Charges at Bergdorf Goodman, Saks Fifth Avenue, some boutique in Soho I'd never heard of. Individual purchases ranging from hundreds to thousands of dollars. A handbag for $3,000, shoes for $1,200, a single spa day for $800. How do you know Tom doesn't know? Because the statements go to her mother's house. I've seen them. He showed me images of credit card bills, all addressed to Alice Whitney, care of Margaret Ashworth. She's been hiding it for 8 months now. Every month she pays the minimum, which means the interest is piling up. At this rate, she'll owe $60,000 by the end of the year. That's not illegal. No, but it's deceptive. And it gets better. He pulled up another document. See this? This is Tom's investment account at Holbrook. He's been diverting funds from it for the last 6 months. Small amounts, $5,000 here, $3,000 there. All going into a separate account Alice doesn't know about. I leaned closer, my stomach tightening as I studied the transactions. They were regular, almost methodical. Every 2 weeks, another transfer. The dates corresponded with Tom's paychecks. Why would he do that? He's smart enough to know he needs an escape hatch. He's creating a nest egg Alice can't touch. But here's the interesting part. Anthony zoomed in on one of the transactions. These diversions are happening through accounts that aren't quite above board. Tom's using client funds as temporary collateral, moving money around to hide the gaps. My mouth went dry. That's fraud. Technically, yes, it's called kiting. If anyone at Holbrook found out, he'd be fired, possibly arrested. Anthony sat back, watching my face. Tom's desperate. He's trying to protect himself from Alice, but he's doing it in a way that could destroy his career. I felt a strange mixture of anger and sadness wash over me. My son, the boy I'd raised to be honest, to work hard, to do the right thing, was committing fraud. And he was doing it because he'd married someone who'd corrupted him. Or maybe I was making excuses for him. Maybe Tom had always had this capacity for deception in him, buried somewhere deep, and Alice had just given him permission to let it out. Maybe I'd failed him somehow, hadn't taught him the right lessons, hadn't shown him how to be strong without being dishonest. The thought made my chest ache. What else? I asked, my voice rough. Anthony pulled up a series of photographs. Alice has been meeting with someone, a man named David Thornton. He's a divorce attorney, one of the most expensive in the state. The photos showed Alice and a distinguished-looking man in his 50s sitting at a cafe, leaning close, talking intently. There were multiple shots from different days, different locations. In some, Alice was smiling, animated. In others, she looked serious, focused, taking notes on a legal pad. When were these taken? Over the last 3 months. She's been very careful, always meeting him during the day when Tom's at work. Always in public places where she looks like just another client having coffee with her lawyer. He paused. But she's meeting with him a lot, more than someone would need for a simple consultation. Maybe she is just a client. Maybe. But why would she need a divorce attorney when she's been married less than 2 years? Anthony zoomed in on one photo. Look at her expression. That's not someone having a casual conversation. That's someone planning something. I studied the photo carefully. Alice's face was animated, eager. She was leaning forward, her hand on the attorney's arm, her whole body language suggesting intimacy and urgency. There was an intensity to the gesture that made me uncomfortable, like I was witnessing something private, something I shouldn't be seeing. You think she's planning to divorce Tom? I think she's getting ready to, yes. As soon as he's in the right financial position, as soon as she's secured her cut, she'll file. And Tom won't see it coming until it's too late. The cold calculation of it stunned me. This was the woman my son loved, the woman he'd chosen to build a life with. And she was already planning the exit strategy. We need to tell him. No. Anthony's voice was firm. He closed the laptop and looked at me directly. If we tell him now, he'll defend her. He'll convince himself we're wrong, that we're just bitter people trying to ruin his marriage. Love makes people stupid, Clara. It makes them blind. Tom's not stupid. He is when it comes to Alice. He's invested everything in this marriage, his identity, his social status, his future plans. If we tell him she's planning to leave him, he'll do mental gymnastics to explain it away. He'll say we misunderstood, that we're taking things out of context. Alice will cry, play the victim, and Tom will choose her over us. We'll lose any chance of helping him. I knew he was right, but I hated it. Every instinct I had as a mother was screaming at me to warn Tom, to protect him, to stand between him and this threat. But Anthony was right. Tom wouldn't listen. Not yet. So what do? We gather more evidence. We build a case that's so airtight, so damning, that even Tom can't deny it. And then, when the moment is right, we show him exactly who he married. I thought about this, about the implications, about what we were really planning. And Alice gets destroyed, publicly, completely, without mercy. Anthony's eyes were cold, harder than I'd ever seen them. She wanted to cut you out of Tom's life, treat you like trash. She's been using my father as a prop, dumping him on you like he's worthless. She's been bleeding Tom dry while planning to leave him. She deserves everything we're going to do to her. Part of me wanted to protest, to say this was too cruel, too calculated. This wasn't who I was. I was a nurse, someone who spent her life helping people, healing them. This plan Anthony was laying out, it was dark, vengeful, designed to inflict maximum damage. But the other part of me, the part that had been humiliated and dismissed and treated like garbage, wanted exactly what Anthony was offering. That part wanted to watch Alice's perfect facade crumble, wanted to see her suffer the way she'd made me suffer. Revenge. The word tasted bitter and sweet at the same time. How do we start? I asked. Anthony smiled, and there was something almost predatory in that expression. We start by becoming indispensable. You take care of my father, do it perfectly, show Tom and Alice that they need you. Meanwhile, I keep gathering information, keep monitoring Alice's activities. We build trust on one side and gather ammunition on the other. And then we burn their world down. The next morning, I called in sick to work. It wasn't entirely a lie. My stomach was churning and I'd barely slept. Martin had woken up twice during the night, confused and calling for his late wife. I'd sat with him, held his hand, given him water, and whispered that everything was okay until he drifted back to sleep. Each time, I'd wondered what kind of people could abandon someone so vulnerable, so helpless. Martin wasn't just old and sick. He was frightened, lost in a fog of dementia that stripped away everything except basic need and emotion. And Alice had dumped him here without a second thought. Anthony had left around midnight, but not before installing some kind of monitoring software on the laptop Tom kept in the study. It'll mirror his activity, he explained, his fingers moving quickly over the keyboard. Emails, browser history, everything. He won't know it's there. I'd watched him work, feeling the weight of what we were doing settle over me like a heavy blanket. This was surveillance, invasion of privacy, the kind of thing that, in any other context, I would have found reprehensible. Is that legal? Anthony had looked up at me, his expression neutral. Does it matter? It should have mattered. In a just world, in the world I thought I lived in, it would have mattered. But at this point, I was past caring about legal niceties. My son had committed fraud. My daughter-in-law was planning to destroy him, and I was the only one who seemed to care about stopping it. Tom called at 9 that morning. I almost didn't answer, but Anthony had texted me earlier. Act normal, be the perfect mother, make them think everything's fine. So I answered, injecting warmth into my voice like I was auditioning for a role. Hi, sweetie. Hi, Mum. Just checking in about Dad's grandfather. Tom's voice was casual, distracted. I could hear Alice talking in the background, her voice sharp and insistent. Is everything okay? Dad's grandfather. Not Martin, not even Alice's step-grandfather. Just a possessive construction that reduced a human being to a problem someone else owned. The casual cruelty of it made my teeth clench. Everything's fine, I said, forcing my voice to stay light. He had a comfortable night. I gave him his medications on schedule, changed his bedding, made sure he was eating. His oxygen levels are stable. Great, that's great. There was a rustling sound, like Tom was doing something else while talking to me, probably checking his phone or reading the newspaper. Listen, we'll be back Sunday night. You can handle things until then, right? Not. Are you okay? Not. Is this too much to ask? Not. We really appreciate this. Just, you can handle things, right? Like I was a service provider confirming availability for a job. Of course. I paused, choosing my words carefully. Tom, you could have asked me before leaving Martin here. I would have said yes. There was a moment of silence. In the background, Alice's voice had stopped. She was listening now. I know, Mum. Sorry. It was kind of last minute and we didn't want to bother you. Didn't want to bother me. Not didn't think about me or forgot to ask me. Didn't want to bother me, like I was someone you'd interrupt with an inconvenient request, like asking my permission was more trouble than it was worth. It's fine, I said, the lie tasting like ash. I'm happy to help. You know I'd do anything for you. Thanks, Mum. You're the best. I'll call you tomorrow. He hung up before I could say goodbye. I sat there holding the phone, feeling that familiar ache in my chest, the ache that came from loving someone who didn't love you back the same way, from giving everything and receiving crumbs in return. Then Anthony's words came back to me. Make them think everything's fine. Right. Everything was fine. Perfect, even. I spent the day taking care of Martin, documenting everything. Anthony had suggested I keep detailed records of his care, timestamps, medications, meals, everything. Evidence, he'd said. Show that you were the one doing all the work while they were partying in the Hamptons. So I kept a notebook, writing down every medication dose, every meal, every time I changed his sheets or checked his vitals. I photographed the IV bags, the oxygen readings, the schedule Alice had left me. I documented everything with the thoroughness of someone who knew this information would matter later. At 3 p.m, Alice posted photos on social media. Her account was public, another piece of her carefully crafted image. Perfect family, perfect life, perfect everything. She had thousands of followers, mostly other wealthy young women and social climbers who wanted to be part of her world. The photos showed her and Tom on a beach, arms around each other, smiling at the camera. Alice was wearing a designer bikini, her body perfect and tanned. Tom looked relaxed, younger somehow, like he'd shed years just by getting away. There were more photos, them at a restaurant, champagne glasses raised in a toast, them on a boat, wind in their hair, them laughing at some private joke. The caption read, "Grateful for family time and new traditions. Blessed Thanksgiving, Hamptons. New traditions. No mention of me. No mention of Martin, dying in a hospital bed in my guest room while they posed for Instagram. No acknowledgement that they'd abandoned an elderly man to go party. Just new traditions. Blessed, grateful." The hypocrisy of it made me want to scream. I showed the post to Anthony when he stopped by that evening, bringing Chinese takeout and a bottle of wine. "Perfect," he said, studying the photos on my phone. "Save all of this. Screenshot everything. Make sure you have dates and timestamps. Why? Because when the time comes, we're going to show everyone exactly what kind of people they are. The contrast between these perfect photos and the reality of what they did will be devastating." He was right. The optics were terrible. Young couple abandons elderly family member to go party in the Hamptons. Leaves him with the mother-in-law they've been treating like trash. It was the kind of story that would spread like wildfire through Alice's social circle. The kind of thing that would make people whisper and judge and ostracize. But we needed more. We needed something bigger, something that would destroy them completely. Tom's accessing the Holbrook system from the laptop, Anthony said, pulling up his monitoring software. Look at this. I watched as lines of code and financial data scrolled across the screen. I didn't understand most of it, but Anthony was making notes, his expression growing darker with each passing minute. What am I looking at? Tom's moving money again, larger amounts this time. He's getting desperate or he's getting bolder. Either way, he's creating a trail that's going to be very hard to explain if anyone looks closely. He pointed to a series of transactions. See these? He's taking client funds, using them as temporary collateral for his personal investments, then moving them back before anyone notices. It's a shell game, and eventually, someone's going to catch on. Can you make someone look closely? Anthony smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. I can do better than that. I can make sure the right people see exactly what he's doing at exactly the right moment. But not yet, not until we have everything we need. Over the next 3 days, we fell into a routine. I took care of Martin during the day, managing his medications, his feeding tube, his oxygen levels. He had moments of clarity where he'd talk about his late wife, about his life in the Navy, about his children when they were young. In those moments, I liked him. He was sweet, confused, frightened of the darkness that kept claiming his mind. And Alice had dumped him here without a second thought. Had treated him like an inconvenience, a problem to be solved by foisting him onto someone else. At night, Anthony and I would sit at the kitchen table and go through everything he'd gathered. Alice's credit card statements showing her mounting debt, Tom's financial irregularities, the pattern of fraud becoming clearer with each transaction, the meetings with the divorce attorney, captured in dozens of photographs, text messages Anthony had intercepted through some technical wizardry I didn't fully understand, emails between Alice and her mother where they talked about Tom like he was a business investment, not a husband. We need something nuclear, I said on the third night, pushing away the remains of our dinner. Something that will destroy them both in one move. Anthony was quiet for a long moment, his fingers tapping against his wineglass. Then he said, I might have something, but it's risky. Tell me. Holbrook Financial is being audited next month. Routine compliance check happens every year. But if certain irregularities were to come to light during that audit, Tom wouldn't just lose his job, he'd face criminal charges. You want to report him? No. I want to make sure the auditors find exactly what they need to find, without it being traced back to us. He pulled up a file on his laptop. I've been monitoring Tom's activity. I know which accounts he's been using, which transactions are questionable. All I have to do is make sure the auditors look at those specific accounts. How? Anonymous tip, untraceable. The auditors follow up, find the irregularities, and Tom goes down. That could destroy his entire career. He could go to prison. Yes. Anthony's voice was cold, stripped of any emotion. He could. Just like he destroyed you by cutting you out of his life. Just like he's letting Alice destroy his own integrity by committing fraud. He made his choices, Clara. Now he gets to live with the consequences. I thought about Tom as a little boy, riding his bike, skinning his knee, running to me for comfort. I thought about staying up all night when he had pneumonia, feeding him soup and checking his temperature every hour. I thought about working 3 jobs to pay for his college, about believing that if I just sacrificed enough, loved him enough, gave him enough opportunities, he'd turn out okay. And then I thought about him closing the door in my face 3 weeks ago, about the note on the refrigerator, about real family, about being reduced to hired help in my own son's life. Do it, I said. Sunday night, Tom and Alice came home. I'd spent the entire day preparing for their return. I'd cleaned the house until it gleamed, made sure every surface was spotless. I'd organized all of Martin's medical records, printed out detailed care logs showing every medication dose, every meal, every vital sign check. I'd laundered all the bedding, restocked the medical supplies, even bought fresh flowers for the dining room table. I wanted everything to be perfect. Wanted them to see exactly how much work I'd done, how thoroughly I'd cared for their responsibility while they'd been off enjoying themselves. Maybe, some small part of me thought, they'd see what I'd done and feel grateful, feel guilty, feel something. They walked in around 7, tanned and relaxed, carrying expensive luggage and shopping bags from boutique stores. Alice was wearing sunglasses inside, even though the sun had set an hour ago, designer clothes that probably cost more than my monthly salary. Tom looked younger somehow, like the weekend had erased years of stress from his face. "Mom," Tom said, giving me a brief hug that felt perfunctory, obligatory. His mind was already moving on to other things. "How was everything?" "Fine. Martin's been stable. I have all his medication logs and care notes in the guest room. His oxygen levels have been good, though he had a rough night on Friday. I had to adjust his dosage." "Great, that's great." Tom was already moving past me, dropping his luggage in the hall without a second glance. He stretched, yawned. "Man, I need a shower. Traffic from the airport was brutal." Alice hadn't even looked at me. She was checking her phone, scrolling through messages with her thumb, her expression distant and preoccupied. Whatever world she inhabited, I clearly wasn't part of it. "Tom, darling, your mother's still here." The way she said it, the tone, flat and dismissive, like I was an unwelcome guest who'd overstayed their welcome, a piece of furniture that needed to be moved out of the way. "Right, sorry, Mom." Tom turned back to me, pulling out his wallet, with the practiced ease of someone who solved all problems with money. "Listen, thanks for taking care of everything. We really appreciate it." He started counting bills, thumbing through 20s and 50s like he was paying for a pizza delivery. He was trying to pay me, again. "I don't want your money," I said, my voice sharper than I'd intended. Tom looked confused, his hand frozen halfway to mine. "But you took time off work. You should be compensated." "I'm your mother. You don't compensate your mother for taking care of family." Alice finally looked up from her phone. "Clara, don't be difficult. Tom's trying to be generous." Generous, like I was some charity case, someone who needed their handouts to survive, like the 4 days I'd spent caring for a dying man were worth a few $100s in cash. "I need to talk to you both," I said, forcing my voice to stay calm. "About Martin." "What about him?" Alice asked, her tone sharp and impatient. "He needs full-time care, skilled nursing. He was on a ventilator twice this weekend. His oxygen levels are dropping. He needs to be in a facility with 24-hour medical staff, proper equipment." Alice's expression hardened. "That's expensive. Anthony can't afford that." "Then he needs to be with family, with you. We're not equipped to care for someone in his condition." Alice crossed her arms, her body language defensive. "We both work full-time. We have social obligations, commitments. We have lives, Clara." "So do I." "You're a nurse. This is literally what you do." Alice's voice rose slightly, frustration bleeding through her perfect facade. "You have the training, the experience. We're asking for help, not trying to burden you. You didn't ask. You left him here without telling me. You went to the Hamptons and stuck me with a dying man who needs round-the-clock care." Tom stepped between us, his hands raised in a placating gesture. "Okay, let's all calm down. Mom, Alice and I will figure something out. We'll talk to Anthony, look at options, explore different facilities. But right now, we're exhausted, and we just want to relax and decompress." "Tom, your grandfather needs help now." "He's not my grandfather," Tom said, and there was an edge to his voice I'd never heard before. Sharp, cutting, final. "He's Alice's step-grandfather. I barely know him. And honestly, Mum, this is between Alice's family and Anthony. It's not our problem. Not our problem. Those words hung in the air like a slap. I stared at my son, this man I'd raised, this person I'd sacrificed everything for, and I didn't recognize him. When had he become so callous, so cold? When had he learned to reduce human beings to problems that belonged to someone else? Fine, I said, my voice flat. I'll call Anthony and let him know you're home. He can make arrangements to move Martin. Thank you, Alice said, already turning away, dismissing me. And Clara, next time, maybe don't act like we're imposing when we ask for a simple favor. A simple favor. 4 days of round-the-clock care for a dying man was a simple favor. The casual cruelty of it, the complete lack of awareness or empathy, took my breath away. I gathered my things in silence. Tom walked me to the door, kissed my cheek with that same perfunctory affection, and said, "Thanks again, Mum. You're the best." The words felt hollow, automatic, like something he'd been programmed to say without any real feeling behind them. I drove home in a daze, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles went white. The night air was cold, and my breath fogged the windshield. I felt numb, empty, like something vital had been carved out of my chest. When I got home, Anthony was waiting on my porch. He was sitting in one of my old wicker chairs, his coat pulled tight against the cold, his face shadowed in the dim porch light. "How did it go?" he asked. "They're awful," I said, my voice shaking. I could feel tears burning behind my eyes, threatening to spill over. "They're just awful people, Anthony." "I know." He stood up, his expression sympathetic. "But now you see it, right? You see what they really are? No more excuses, no more hoping they'll change." I nodded, feeling tears burn my eyes. The last shred of denial, the last hope that maybe I'd been wrong, that maybe Tom was still the son I remembered, crumbled away. "Good," Anthony said gently. "Because now comes the hard part. Now we make our move." He pulled out his laptop, balancing it on the porch railing. "I sent the anonymous tip to the SEC this afternoon. They'll start their investigation in the next few days, cross-reference it with Holbrook's scheduled audit. Tom's transactions are going to get flagged, examined by forensic accountants who know exactly what to look for." "How long until they find something?" "A week, maybe 2. They're thorough, methodical. But once they start looking at the accounts I flagged, the fraud will be obvious." He showed me a document on his screen. "But that's not our only play. Look at this." It was an email exchange between Alice and David Thornton, the divorce attorney. Recent, sent while they were in the Hamptons. The timestamp showed it had been sent at 11:47 p.m. on Thanksgiving night, while I was here taking care of Martin. The email was explicit, detailed, damning. Alice was asking about timeline for divorce proceedings, about asset protection strategies, about how to maximize her settlement while minimizing Tom's ability to fight back. She wanted to know about hiding assets, about the best time to file, about how to make sure she got the maximum amount while leaving Tom with the minimum. "She's planning to file in the next 3 months," Anthony said. "As soon as the holidays are over and Tom's year-end bonus clears. She's got it all mapped out. We need to show this to Tom." "Not yet." Anthony's voice was firm. "If we show him now, she'll deny it, say the email was hypothetical, just exploring options in case things went wrong. She'll cry, play the victim, say she was scared after hearing about his financial stress. She'll spin it, and Tom will believe her because he wants to believe her. Then when she can't deny it anymore, when we catch her in the act," he smiled, "and I know exactly how to do it." The next morning, Anthony set his plan in motion. He called Alice from his car, using his cell phone so she wouldn't be suspicious if she checked caller ID later. I sat beside him in the passenger seat, parked a block away from Tom and Alice's apartment, listening to his side of the conversation through the speaker. "Alice, it's Anthony. I need to talk to you about your grandfather." There was a pause. Alice's voice came through tinny and guarded. "Is he okay?" "For now, But I spoke with his doctors yesterday, and the news isn't good. They're saying weeks now, not months. Maybe days if he takes a turn. Anthony's voice was somber, perfectly calibrated to deliver bad news. I wanted to talk to you about arrangements. Arrangements? For his estate, the trust. Another pause, longer this time. I could almost hear the wheels turning in Alice's head, calculating, assessing. What about it? There are things we need to discuss, financial things. Can you meet me for lunch today? My treat. The hook was baited. Alice agreed, suggested a restaurant in Midtown, expensive, exclusive. Somewhere she could be seen. After the call ended, Anthony turned to me. She'll bring her divorce attorney, or at least call him immediately after we talk. Want to bet on it? No bet, I said. We spent the next few hours preparing. Anthony had rented a small office space downtown, made it look like a lawyer's office, with borrowed furniture and legal books. He had business cards printed, created a fake identity. All of it was theatre, props for the performance we were about to give. There's a trust, Anthony explained to me as we set up the space. Martin set it up 20 years ago, before the dementia. Most of his money goes to his grandchildren, split equally. That includes Alice. How much money? About $3 million. I sat down hard in one of the office chairs, processing this. $3 million. It was more money than I'd see in 5 lifetimes of nursing. Alice doesn't know the exact amount, Anthony continued. Margaret does, but she's kept it vague with Alice, just said it was substantial. Today, I'm going to tell Alice it's closer to $5 million. And I'm going to explain that if she's still married to Tom when Martin dies, that money becomes marital property subject to division in a divorce. So she'll want to divorce Tom before Martin dies to keep it all for herself. Exactly. Anthony adjusted his tie in a mirror, checking his appearance. She'll panic. She'll think she needs to move faster than planned. And panic makes people sloppy, makes them make mistakes. Over the next week, we watched it happen exactly as Anthony predicted. Alice's communication with her divorce attorney increased dramatically. She was meeting with him twice a week now, always during Tom's working hours. Anthony's surveillance photos showed her getting less careful, less cautious about being seen. She met Thornton at restaurants where she knew people, places where she'd have to smile and wave at acquaintances while discussing how to destroy her husband financially. She started liquidating assets with increasing urgency. Small things at first, jewelry she claimed to have lost, a painting from their apartment that she said was being cleaned and restored, a designer handbag collection that she told Tom she was downsizing. But Anthony tracked the sales through online marketplaces and consignment shops, photographed the receipts, saw the money going into accounts Tom didn't have access to. Accounts that were in her name only, accounts she'd opened quietly using her mother's address. The amounts added up quickly. 10,000 here, 15,000 there. By the end of the week, she'd moved almost 70,000 in assets into accounts Tom didn't know existed. And Tom, oblivious, kept committing fraud at Holbrook. I watched it all unfold through Anthony's laptop, feeling like I was watching a car accident in slow motion. The data scrolling across the screen, the photographs updating in real time, the evidence mounting with each passing day. My son, my beautiful boy who'd once been so innocent, was about to lose everything. His career, his marriage, his reputation, possibly his freedom. And I was helping make it happen. The knowledge sat in my stomach like a stone. "You're having second thoughts," Anthony said one evening. We were in my kitchen, going through the latest batch of evidence. He'd brought Chinese food again, but neither of us was eating. The containers sat cooling on the table, forgotten. He's my son. He's a grown man who made his own choices, who treated you like garbage, who's committing fraud, who married a woman who's planning to destroy him. Anthony's voice was gentle but firm, like a doctor delivering a difficult diagnosis. "You're not doing this to him, Clara. He did it to himself. We're just making sure he faces the consequences. But prison, maybe, maybe not. Anthony leaned back in his chair, his expression thoughtful. If he's smart, he'll take a plea deal when it's offered, cooperate with investigators, show remorse, get probation instead of jail time. He'll lose his license to practice in finance, but he'll survive. He'll have to rebuild, but he can do it. People do. And Alice? Alice gets exposed for what she is, a gold digger, a manipulator, a woman who married for money and planned to divorce for more money. Her reputation in her precious social circle will be destroyed. All those people she's worked so hard to impress will turn on her. That's how those circles work, Clara. They eat their own at the first sign of scandal. I thought about this, about what we were really doing, about revenge and justice and whether there was any real difference between them, about whether I was helping my son or destroying him, about whether I'd crossed a line I could never uncross. My phone buzzed on the table, making us both jump. A text from Tom. "Hey, Mom. Haven't talked to you in a while. Want to grab coffee this weekend?" My heart lurched painfully in my chest. This was the son I remembered, the one who used to call me just to chat, who used to ask for advice about life and work and everything. Maybe there was still hope. Maybe beneath all the changes, all the corruption, the real Tom was still there, reaching out. Maybe... Another text came through before I could finish the thought. "Alice thinks we should talk about you taking over more of Martin's care. He's doing better, and the nursing home is expensive. Would save us a lot of money if you could help out a few days a week." The hope died as quickly as it had sparked. And there it was, the real reason for the coffee invitation. They wanted to use me again. Use my time, my skills, my compassion. They wanted me to provide free labor so they could save money, all while continuing to treat me like I didn't matter. I showed the text to Anthony. "What are you going to tell him?" I thought about it for a long moment, feeling something hard and cold settle in my chest. The last remnants of doubt, of maternal instinct telling me to protect my child at all costs, faded away. "Of course, sweetie. Happy to help. How about Saturday at 10, the cafe near your office?" Tom's response was immediate. "Perfect. Thanks, Mom. You're the best." I set down the phone, feeling cold and resolved and somehow liberated. "Saturday," I said to Anthony. "That's when we start phase 2. Saturday morning, I arrived at the cafe 15 minutes early. I dressed carefully, wanting to look put together, but not trying too hard. The woman Tom remembered, the mother he could take for granted. Tom arrived exactly at 10, looking tired. There were dark circles under his eyes, and his suit, expensive as it was, looked rumpled. "Hey, Mom," he said, hugging me briefly before sitting down. He ordered a black coffee, no food. "Thanks for meeting me." "Of course, how are you? You look exhausted." "Work's been crazy. We're in the middle of this big audit and everyone's stressed." He ran a hand through his hair. "But that's not why I wanted to talk. It's about Martin." "Yeah. Look, the nursing home is costing us $5,000 a week. $5,000, Mom. That's over $20,000 a month. Anthony can't afford it, and neither can we." "I thought Alice's family had money." Tom's expression tightened. "It's complicated. But the point is, we need to find a cheaper option. And you're so good with him, and you have the medical training. And I thought maybe..." "You thought I'd take care of him full time?" "Just until he..." Tom trailed off, unable to say the words. "Until he dies." "Yeah." Tom looked down at his coffee. "I know it's a lot to ask, Mum, but you'd be helping the family. Helping us. The family. As if I'd been included in that category all along." "Tom," I said carefully, "when you married Alice, did you ever think about what that would mean for us? For our relationship?" He looked surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you've changed. You're different. You don't call anymore unless you need something. You don't visit. Alice treats me like hired help, and you let her." "That's not fair. Alice is just... She has her own way of doing things. She comes from a different background." "A better background than mine, you mean?" I didn't say that. You didn't have to. It's in everything, Tom. The way you talk to me, the way you look at me. I've become an embarrassment to you. Tom's face flushed. You're being dramatic. I love you, Mom, you know that. But Alice and I are building a life together, and sometimes that means making hard choices about priorities. And I'm not a priority. That's not what I said. But it's what you meant. I leaned forward. Tom, are you happy? Really happy? The question seemed to startle him. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Of course I'm happy. I have a great job, a beautiful wife, a nice apartment. That's not what I asked. He looked away, and for a moment I saw something in his expression. Doubt, maybe. Or fear. But then it was gone, replaced by defensiveness. I don't know what you want me to say, Mom. I'm doing fine. Everything's fine. Is it? Because from where I'm sitting, you look exhausted and stressed. Your marriage seems cold, and you're asking your mother to take care of a dying man so you can save money. Jesus, Mom, I'm trying to be responsible. I'm trying to take care of my family. I am your family, or at least I used to be. Tom stood up abruptly. I don't have time for this. I thought you'd understand, thought you'd want to help. But apparently, that's too much to ask. Tom, I'll figure something else out. Thanks for nothing. He walked out, leaving his untouched coffee on the table. I sat there for a long time, feeling my heart break all over again. This was my son, my baby, and I'd just pushed him away. Or maybe he'd pushed me away a long time ago, and I was just now accepting it. My phone buzzed. Anthony. How did it go? Exactly as you predicted. He's angry, defensive, thinks I'm being unreasonable. Good. Let him stew in that. The SEC investigation hits his desk Monday morning. By the time he realizes he has bigger problems than your relationship, it'll be too late. Anthony, I don't know if I can do this. You can. You have to. We're too far in to back out now. He was right. We were too far in. The machine was in motion, grinding forward, and nothing I could do would stop it now. I went home and waited. Monday came. I didn't hear from Tom. Tuesday passed in silence. Wednesday, Anthony called. It happened. The SEC showed up at Holbrook this morning with a warrant. They're seizing records, interviewing employees. Tom's been suspended pending investigation. Oh, God. It gets better. Alice knows. She called her divorce attorney 2 hours after the news broke. They're meeting this afternoon to discuss filing immediately. She's going to leave him right now, while he's being investigated. Of course she is. She can't be associated with a potential criminal. It would ruin her reputation, mess up her chances of getting her inheritance clear. I felt sick. This is really happening. This is really happening. And Clara, it's time for the next phase. Alice is going to need someone to talk to, someone to confide in, and you're going to be that person. She hates me. She needs you. She needs an ally, someone who will validate her decision to leave Tom, someone who will make her feel justified. Anthony's voice was soft, almost hypnotic. You're going to play the supportive mother-in-law, the understanding one, the one who sees that Alice deserves better. Why would I do that? Because it's going to make her confess everything, all her plans, all her manipulations, and you're going to record every word. It happened 4 days after the SEC investigation began. Alice called me Wednesday evening, her voice shaking. Clara, can I come over? I need to talk to someone. I'd been expecting this, but hearing her voice, so vulnerable and frightened, still caught me off guard. Of course, I said, keeping my voice warm. Come over now. She arrived 20 minutes later, still dressed in her expensive clothes but looking disheveled. Her makeup was smudged, and I realized she'd been crying. Thank you for seeing me, she said, standing awkwardly in my doorway. I didn't know who else to call. I led her to the living room, made tea, and sat across from her. The recording device Anthony had given me was in my pocket, already running. What's going on, Alice? It's Tom. The SEC, they're investigating him for fraud. Financial irregularities, they called it. He could lose his job, Clara. He could go to prison. I know, he called me yesterday. This was a lie, but a necessary one. He's devastated. He should be. How could he be so stupid? How could he risk everything we've built? Alice's voice rose, angry and frightened. I've worked so hard to get where we are, to build the right connections, to create the right image, and now he's destroyed it all. It must be very difficult for you. You have no idea. She took a shaky breath. My mother's friends are already talking. They're saying I should leave him, that I shouldn't be associated with someone who's being investigated for fraud, that it reflects badly on me. What do you want to do? Alice looked at me, and for a moment, I saw the real person beneath the perfect facade. She was terrified, angry, calculating. I want to leave him, she said quietly. I know that sounds terrible, but I can't go down with him, Clara. I won't. You love him, though. She laughed, a bitter sound. Love. I married Tom because he had potential, because he was smart and ambitious and going places. But this, she gestured vaguely, this isn't what I signed up for. What did you sign up for? Security, status, a husband who could provide the lifestyle I deserve. She paused. I know you think I'm a terrible person. I can see it in your face every time you look at me. I don't think you're terrible. Yes, you do. You think I stole your son, turned him against you. And maybe I did, but I did it because I had to. Had to? My mother raised me to understand how the world works, Clara. Women like us, we don't have the luxury of marrying for love. We marry for security, for advancement. We marry to protect ourselves. Women like you and your mother, you mean, not women like me. Alice nodded. Yes, women who understand that money equals power equals safety. Tom was my ticket to that safety, but now he's risking everything, and I have to protect myself. How are you going to do that? This was the moment. I could feel it. Alice was on the edge, ready to confess everything. I've been talking to a lawyer, she said. David Thornton. He's the best divorce attorney in the state. We've been planning my exit strategy for months now. Months? Even before the investigation? Yes. I've known for a while that this marriage wasn't going to last. Tom's too much like his mother, too sentimental, too focused on things that don't matter. She looked at me. No offense. None taken. The plan was to wait until the new year, until Tom's bonus cleared, and we'd been married long enough that I could claim half of everything. But now I have to move faster. I have to file before the SEC freezes his assets. That seems very calculated. It is. It has to be. Alice leaned forward. Do you know about Martin? About his trust? I know he has one. He has $3 million, Clara. $3 million. And when he dies, if I'm divorced from Tom, that money is all mine. But if I'm still married, it becomes marital property, and Tom can claim half in the divorce proceedings. She laughed again. Ironic, right? I've been trying to get away from Tom to keep my inheritance, and now I have to get away from him even faster. What about Tom? What's going to happen to him? I don't care. I really don't. He made his choices, and now he gets to live with them, just like you lived with yours. The words hung in the air, cruel and sharp. What does that mean? I asked. You sacrificed everything for him, worked yourself to the bone, gave up your own life, your own dreams, all for a son who grew up and left you behind. Was it worth it, Clara? Was it worth it to end up alone and unappreciated? Something in me snapped. All the careful control, all the planning, all the games we'd been playing, it all dissolved in a wave of pure rage. You're going to regret this, I said quietly. Alice blinked. What? You're going to regret every word you just said, every lie you told, every person you used. She stood up, suddenly wary. Clara, what are you talking about? I pulled out the recording device. This, every word you just said, your lawyer's name, your plan to divorce Tom, your admission that you married him for money, your knowledge of Martin's trust, all of it, Recorded. Alice's face went white. You recorded me? I did. And it's not just me, Alice. It's Anthony, too. He's been monitoring you for months. Your credit card debt, your meetings with the divorce attorney, your emails to your mother. We have everything. That's illegal. You can't use that. Actually, we can. This is a one-party consent state. I'm allowed to record conversations I'm part of. And Anthony's been very careful to make sure everything he gathered is admissible. You horrible woman. Alice's voice was trembling. You absolute horrible woman. No, Alice, I'm a mother. A mother you underestimated. A mother you treated like trash. And now I'm the mother who's going to destroy you. Alice lunged for the recorder, but I stepped back. Too late. It's already backed up to the cloud. Anthony has copies. The SEC has copies. And by tomorrow, Tom will have a copy too. You can't do this. Please, Clara, please. And there it was. Alice, perfect, manipulative Alice, begging. Why shouldn't I asked. Because I'll lose everything. My inheritance, my reputation, everything. The way you tried to make me lose my son. I'm sorry, okay? I'm sorry for everything. I'll make it right. I'll be better. I'll include you in our lives. I'll treat you with respect. Just please don't do this. I looked at her. This woman who had poisoned my son's mind, who had treated me like garbage, who had planned to destroy Tom's life for her own profit. No, I said, you had your chance to be a decent person. You chose not to be. Now you get to face the consequences. Alice collapsed onto my couch, sobbing. Please, please, Clara, I'm begging you. Get out of my house. Clara, get out, now, before I call the police and tell them you're trespassing. She left, still crying, stumbling out to her car. I watched her drive away, feeling nothing but cold satisfaction. My phone rang. Anthony. Did you get it? He asked. Every word. Good. Send it to me. Tomorrow we end this. Tom came to my house the next evening. I'd been expecting him, but seeing him standing on my doorstep, looking broken and lost, still hurt. This was my son, my baby, and I'd helped destroy him. She left me, he said. His voice was flat, empty. Alice left me. Moved out this morning, served me with divorce papers at the office, in front of everyone. I know, I'm sorry. Are you? He looked at me, and there was something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Anger. Real anger. Because Alice said you had something to do with it. Said you and Anthony have been plotting against us. We have. The admission seemed to shock him. He'd been expecting me to deny it, to protest my innocence. What did you do? I recorded her confessing her plan to divorce you, her admission that she married you for money, her knowledge of Martin's trust fund. I gave that recording to the SEC, to her mother, to her divorce attorney, and to your attorney. Tom stared at me. Why? Why would you do that? Because she was using you. Because she was planning to destroy you. Because I love you, and I couldn't let that happen. By destroying me first? He laughed, a harsh sound. The SEC is charging me with fraud, Mum. I'm probably going to prison. I've lost my job, my wife, my reputation. Everything's gone. And you helped make that happen. You made that happen. You committed fraud, Tom. You moved client money around illegally. That wasn't Alice's doing. That was yours. I did it to protect myself from her. And that makes it okay? That makes it legal? Tom slumped against the doorframe. I'm screwed. Completely screwed. My lawyer says the best-case scenario is a plea deal, probation, losing my financial license. Worst case is prison time. Then take the plea deal. Admit what you did, accept responsibility, and rebuild your life. Rebuild? How am I supposed to rebuild when everyone knows what I did? When my career is over, my marriage is over, everything's over. The same way I rebuilt after your father left. The same way I rebuilt every time life knocked me down. You survive, Tom. You figure it out. You become stronger. I'm not you, Mum. I can't just grit my teeth and push through. You're more like me than you think. You're just too proud to see it. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked, Did you know? Did you know what Alice was planning all along? No, but Anthony did. He's known for months. And you helped him destroy my marriage. I helped him expose the truth. There's a difference. Is there? Tom pushed off the doorframe. You know what? I don't care anymore. I don't care about Alice. I don't care about the fraud charges. I don't care about any of it. I'm done. Tom, no, I'm done, Mom. Done with all of it. Done with you. He walked away, got in his car, and drove off. I stood there in the doorway, watching his taillights disappear, and felt something break inside me. This was what I'd wanted, wasn't it? Revenge, justice, making them pay. But standing there alone, I just felt empty. Anthony arrived an hour later. I heard Tom came by. He hates me. He's angry. He'll get over it. Will he? I turned to look at Anthony. Will he really get over this? Will he ever forgive me? Maybe not. But does that matter? He made his choices, Clara. He chose Alice over you. He chose money and status over integrity. He chose to commit fraud. Those were his decisions. And what were my decisions? To destroy my own son? To save him from himself? Anthony sat down heavily. Alice is ruined, you know. Her mother found out about the credit card debt, about the divorce attorney meetings, about everything. She's cut Alice off financially, and Alice's social circle has turned on her. They're calling her a gold digger, a manipulator. She's been dropped from the clubs, the charities, everything. Good, I said, but the word felt hollow. Martin died this morning. I looked at him in shock. What? Peacefully, in his sleep at the nursing home. He's finally at peace. Anthony's voice was soft. The trust goes into probate now, and since Alice filed for divorce before his passing, but the divorce isn't final, the lawyers are going to have a field day fighting over whether that money is marital property. She won't see a penny of it. Probably not. Tom's lawyers will tie it up for years. By the time it's resolved, the legal fees will have eaten most of it. We sat in silence for a while. Then Anthony said, We did it. We got our revenge. Yes, I said, we did. But it didn't feel like victory. It felt like ashes. The next morning, I woke up to missed calls from Tom's attorney. I called back, expecting more recriminations, more anger. Instead, I got information. Tom had taken the plea deal. He'd confessed to everything, agreed to 5 years probation, community service, and permanent revocation of his financial license. No prison time. He'd cooperate fully with the investigation, testify if needed, and pay restitution. He wanted me to tell you, the attorney said. He's moving out of the city, going somewhere to start over. He said to tell you he needs time, but maybe someday. The attorney trailed off, leaving that thought unfinished. Maybe someday. I spent the next week in a daze, going through the motions of living, work, home, sleep. Anthony checked in regularly, kept me updated on the fallout. Alice had moved back in with her mother, but that situation was volatile. Margaret Ashworth was furious about the credit card debt, the recordings, everything. There were rumors Alice might leave the state, try to rebuild somewhere no one knew her story. Tom had indeed left the city. No one knew where he'd gone. He'd closed his social media accounts, cut ties with everyone from his old life. And me? I had my revenge. I had my justice.